Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Triumph Beyond Trauma. I hope that you have had an amazing start to 2025. Before we crack into this episode, I want to mention that the First Responder Mental Wellness Method is available to join at any time. If taking more control of your mental health journey is high on your priority list for 2025, my program is a perfect way to get started. Priced at a very reasonable 247 Australian dollars, it is super accessible to anyone. I personally love how easy the program is to navigate. Having been there myself, deep in the depths of PTSD, anxiety, and depression, I know how difficult it can be to get to a yoga class, to read another book, or even implement things that my therapist has given me. This program gives you easy to follow lessons, 3 implementation weeks, more if you choose, access anywhere at any time, and just a really nice way to start understanding what's going on, why, and what you can do now to take back control. If being in more control of your mental health journey is something that interests you, head over to tacticalyogaaustralia.com and check out the program there. No more wait lists. You can just dive straight in and get immediate access. Now, on to today's amazing guest, Stephanie Bochorsky. Steph is a West Australian police officer, an Australian Defence Force veteran, and an absolutely exceptional woman. Steph has the most incredible story to share with us today, and for that has been awarded the inaugural National Police Bravery Medal, the Star of Courage, and the Commissioner's Award for Bravery. Steph is a passionate mental health advocate and is currently studying psychology. I'm absolutely thrilled to bring this conversation to you. It is always so lovely to meet with and speak to someone who is as passionate about reducing the stigma around mental health issues within the first responder and veteran communities as I am. Definitely a heads up for this episode. Steph didn't receive her medals for a run of the mill assault. The incident that she shares with us is intense, to say the least. It involves children and is domestic violence related. We also talk about death by suicide. Please manage your own capacity to listen to this episode today. If you need mental health support, please reach out to any of the services in the show notes. They are listed there for each and every episode. With that, let's get into the final episode for season 4. Welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma, the podcast that explores journeys of resilience and hope. I'm Rosie Skene, a yoga and breathwork teacher and founder of Tactical Yoga Australia. As a former soldier's wife, mum to 3 beautiful kids, and a medically retired New South Wales police officer with PTSD, I understand the challenges of navigating mental health in the first responder and veteran community. Join us for incredible stories from individuals who've confronted the depths of mental illness and discovered their path to happiness and purpose, as well as solo episodes and expert discussions. Together, we'll uncover the tools to help you navigate your journey toward a brighter, more fulfilling life. Whether you're looking for helpful insights, practical tips, or just a friendly reminder that you're not alone, Triumph Beyond Trauma has got your back. You matter, and your journey to a happier, more meaningful life starts right here. Steph, welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma. It's so good to have you here finally. We've been trying to tee it up for a little while.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Usually I start with a bit about your background and how you've come to join, for you, West Australian Police and Defence. So I'd love for you to give us a bit of your background and history and how both of those things came about.
Yeah, so I grew up in Perth, Western Australia, and I attended Craigie Primary School and went to high school at Woodvale, it's called, where I was accepted into the music program. Growing up, I did feel like I was a bit of a black sheep amongst my siblings. I'm the youngest of a brother and a sister, and I guess what changed as I was growing up was in high school, and I experienced a lot of challenges ranging from bullying, and then I found a diagnosis. My mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. So with experiencing those challenges as well as the diagnosis of my mum, it kind of led me onto the path of, I don't know, I just felt like when I turned 17, I knew that I either wanted to join the police or the military, because my dad was a firefighter and my mum was a patient care attendant.
Uh,
We're seeing them both my parents in these roles in serving the community. I saw that and I admired that for stepping up to protect and serve the community, obviously in different ways, because, dad being a firefighter and patient care attendant, when I say serving and protecting the community, it's obviously in different ways.
Yeah.
However, back then I felt there was I had a deep sense of responsibility to do the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
So from a young age, I knew I wanted to serve the community. I just didn't know how. And it was from my experiences in high school that led me to think maybe that was a sign saying, hey, here's your future. Help people who can't fight back,
Yeah.
I guess. So I, as a kid running around, I never thought that I'd ever be cut out for a 9 to 5 job, sitting behind a desk and doing spreadsheets. No, thanks. No, that's not me.
Sounds horrible, right?
Oh, fucking awful. Even that now I can't imagine it. Um, I needed a career. I felt as though I was best suited my personality and my deep desire with serving and upholding justice. I wanted to serve and protect and be the one to call when chaos hits the fan. And I felt policing was the best suit for me
Yeah.
because policing to me isn't just about flashing authority, and it's not just about showing up it's about showing up when people are at their lowest and offering safety and support and maybe restoring a little bit faith in humanity. And that's kind of, as my career has progressed, that's how I felt at the time, that's where I wanted to make an impact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So how old were you when you joined?
I joined the police when I was 21. So that was back in December 1st, 2008. Yeah.
Oh. So how did you find that process of joining and all the examinations? Were you excited for it? Was it challenging for you?
Um, it was definitely challenging, I think, because the fact that the day that I sat the police exam was the day that I lost my mum to the fight to cancer.
Wow.
So a lot of people at that time, and my dad was like, you don't have to sit the exam, especially, dealing with that. But my mum was my number one supporter. She was my cheerleader. She was my front runner. Um, and she knew this is something that I always wanted to do when I was, like I said, when I was young. It was either policing or army. I knew that. I just didn't know which one.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was able to put my own feelings and emotions aside on that morning, sitting the exam in order to get through it. So, yes, there were challenges, but back then I felt that I had pretty thick skin and I was able to overcome lots of challenges and obstacles at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible that you were able to do that and sit that exam. That
We
would have
don't
been,
make it.
yeah, it's intense.
Mm.
So where did you go after you've done all your training? What sort of policing? Do you go straight into like a general duties policing in Western Australia?
Yeah. So, I've been in for 16 years now. So a big chunk of my career has been a frontline patrols inquiries officer.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of undercover work, which was with liquor licensing before going down the path of a family domestic violence officer and a specialist child assessment interviewer. Um, so that's where majority of my career was. And around about the time when I was doing country service, that's when another police officer told me about the Army Reserves. And that's what got me into going, well, I never got to pursue it as a full-time career because I got accepted into the police.
Yeah.
What better way to be able to do it part-time to see if it's something that I'd love? And it was something I loved. So I ended up joining the Army Reserves in 2010. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And are you still serving now?
I wish I was only in for 3, 4 years. And then due to being in the country and compacting issues
Yeah.
to discharge, but I'm in the process of actually wanting to get back in. So I'm hoping that they will accept me back in because I miss it immensely and I've still got lots of mates that are in the Army Reserves and I hear about it all the time. So I'm really hope that I can get back in. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Nice
4 years
one.
definitely.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So, Steph, the 28th of August 2015 was a pivotal day in your life, undoubtedly. Can you share what happened on that day and what led you to act and how you reflect on what happened that day now?
Yeah, so August 2015, I was off duty at my home, um, in Doubleview. That's where I was living at the time, and I only moved into that house 2 weeks prior to this happening. So
Right.
it was, yeah, bizarre that it was almost like I was meant to be there. I was sitting in, settling into the night after coming off from night shift, and I was sitting on the couch in my pajamas, and I had a movie on pause in the back of the house, which is, yeah, so my bedroom is situated in the back of the house, and I was interested in a UFC comeback special on TV, which was in the living room, which is situated at the front of the house. And I was alerted to what sounded like a argument across the road, and I heard a woman screaming, and I opened up my fly screen, my wooden door, but I had the fly screen door still situated, and she was pacing to and from the door, saying, "It's okay. No one's no one's here. No one's here to come get you," or something along the lines of that. And all I could hear was a male voice yelling back, "The Maoris are out to get me." And she's just consolidating him. And at that point, after listening in from what I could hear from across the street, I thought that's just a couple having an argument. I'm just going to leave glass screen door open,
Mm.
and if anything happens, then I can make a call or whatnot. And I sat back down, and wouldn't have even been a minute that passed, and I heard out a blood curdling scream from this woman. So I ran out onto my front porch and I yelled out to her across the road, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" And she was quite distressed, and she yelled back at me, hysterical, "No, you're setting my kids on fire." So I immediately ran across the road to her, and I ran past her, and I told her no one is to come in after me and to call the police. When I entered the house, I could smell a strong odor of petrol in the air, and my eyes were diverted to the right-hand side of the house, and it was almost like the room was like a flickering light, if you were to leave a
Yeah.
candle. So my attention was drawn to that room. So I ran into that room, and that's when I saw, the 3-year-old standing up in her cot with her whole head, engulfed in fire, and the only words that could leave my mouth at that time was, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
Um, I just couldn't believe what I was confronted with and what I was seeing. I saw a blanket on a bed, and I immediately threw it over her to put the flames out, and as soon as I did that, I did feel this presence from behind me. So as I'm dealing with her, I turned over to look over my shoulder, and I saw him, who was the father of the 3-year-old, standing over his 8-year-old little girl, dousing her with petrol. So her yeah, face was totally being drenched in petrol as well. He was, 6 foot tall. He was big, solid guy. And as I'm watching this, the 3-year-old little girl had her hands really tightly around my neck. So not only could I smell her burnt flesh, but I could feel like the petrol going onto my clothes as well.
Yeah.
And in my moment, I thought to myself, "Fuck, like, how am I going to get these kids out? What's he going to do?" Because at the time I had tunnel vision as well, and I didn't know that he had a big butcher knife in the other hand, so he could
Yeah.
have lunged at any of us at any of that time.
Mhm.
And in that moment, I thought the only thing I could do was use my voice and maintain my distance to give him clear verbal instructions, and I told him to get the fuck back, and he just looked blankly back at me. Thankfully, that's all he did, because I didn't have any recruitments for protection. I don't know if the police were called after I told the mum to call when I ran past her. So I thought, he's going to set the 8-year-old little girl on fire any moment now because she was drenched in the petrol, that I crept forward and I was saying to her, "Come on, sweetie, get up," and she wasn't listening and she wasn't responding. So that's when I grabbed the back of her pajamas, of her collar, and I dragged her out of her bed with my eyes locked on him the whole time.
Yeah.
And he actually didn't move, which I was surprised with. So I had the 2 girls and I was walking backwards whilst I kept my eyes on him with them, and I exited the house. Stayed with the girls, thank God. So once outside, I directed the child's mum to remain outside, until the police arrived. And I told her that, I was really concerned with the little girl's burns. I'm taking her across the road to my house to attend to them. So, I'm holding her, and the whole time I'm walking across the road and talking to her, the thing that sticks out for me the most is she wasn't screaming, she wasn't crying, she was just sobbing the whole time. And for a 3-year-old, having a 3-year-old myself who's very vocal, um, I think that's the thing that stood out for me the most. And I still get choked up about it, thinking about it, because when I went into the bathroom and put her on the bench, she was just sobbing. She, when I unbuttoned one of her, like the top of her button, I could see the severity of the burns. It was almost like my tattoos, it was black.
Mm.
At that point, I thought, um, I need to get her into the shower. So, which over the shower is over my bathtub, so I had to turn the shower on to fill the bathtub. And I picked her up to put her in the bathtub, and she wouldn't let go of me. She was holding on that tight again. And, so as I'm holding her, I thought, "Okay, well, I'm gonna have to jump in the shower with her fully clothed." So I started taking my socks off, and that's when she saw that the bathtub was filling and she let go. So I was able to put her down comfortably into the bath. And as I'm talking to her, I was wondering why she wasn't looking up at me. And to my realization, um, her neck had looked like it had melted into her chest, so she couldn't move her head, and her ear looked like it was singed off, and her beautiful hair was breaking off and into the bath. And at that point, I heard a female officer come in, call out to me from my front door, and I told her that I was in the bathroom. And she walked in, she took one look at the little girl, and the colour from her face just drained. It went like pale white. I asked her if she was okay. I said, "Look, the ambulance need to come here." And she didn't even hesitate. I just think that she wanted to leave the bathroom as quickly as she could because of the severity of the injuries that she had, which in my mind is still kind of blanked out, just numbed out at this point.
Yeah.
Um, I think my mind is just still can't comprehend what I actually saw. Um, and because she was shocked over the injuries to exit the house and get to the St. John ambulance, I think it put me in a better position to be able to attend to her. But once the police arrived a short time later, the father was arrested and charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, along with a numerous length of other serious offences. Um, I couldn't sleep that night for obvious reasons. And the next morning, I ended up going to the children's hospital, and I was advised by nursing staff that the 3-year-old was in an induced coma to the severity of her burns. And the nurse also advised me that the mum and the other 2 children, and when I say 2 children, it was a little boy who
Yeah.
was in a separate room. So thankfully, he got out. Um, and he was able to run out of the house in time. But it wasn't until I went to the hospital that day, and why the 8-year-old little girl wasn't talking back at me, it was because she had severe autism and she was nonverbal. So yeah, that hearing that just signified that, um, Yeah, you just can't comprehend, like, a father that's meant to be your ultimate protector can do that to their kids, let alone anyone,
Mm,
but kids. I still can't get over or move past, I don't think. It's just, yeah, he deserves what he gets.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you. Um, Especially such vulnerable children. Like, yeah, I think if you could understand it, then, you'd want to look into that than not being able to understand it, right? Like, I don't think you're supposed to be able to understand any sort of thinking behind that at all.
No, you can't comprehend it, can you?
No, it's
I
fucking
still to this day
crazy.
can't comprehend it.
No.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Oh, it's so hard, mate. Do you keep in contact with the kids at all? Have you caught up with them since you saw them
I
at the
wa
hospital?
Yeah, I wanted to, but because, as you noticed, I haven't been saying names,
Yeah,
and
no, no,
that's
yeah.
yeah, and that's because it's still very much a, because they're still kids,
Oh,
secrecy,
okay.
their
Yeah, the
names.
privacy.
Yeah, so the privacy around their names, and, also mum didn't wanna be, associated with him anymore for obvious reasons,
Yeah.
and didn't show up at the court proceedings as well, for private because she wanted her privacy and just wanted to move past this. All of them have PTSD because of it, all have, restraining orders for life because of it. And I did want to reach out, and I ended up, contacting the lead detective in charge of the case, and they had since been relocated. And I actually did get her number,
Mhm.
the mother's number the next day when I was in hospital. So I asked her, if you ever need anything, you want to reach out to, please contact me. But then that phone ended up getting damaged, and I was never able to recover the phone number from her. So yeah, I did want to reach back out, but unfortunately, because of change of where they live, and, I don't have to change their names, but I'm
Yeah.
back in contact. But this plays on my mind every day. I always wish that I could reconnect with the mum and the kids, because I really do want to see how she's going, because I
Yeah.
always think about her. I have on my mantelpiece in my lounge room, from the police legacy, I've got like a little police teddy bear. Um, and that's up there. So that's a reminder every day, because I was meant to give that to her and I never got an opportunity to give that to her. So every day I have a reminder of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be the same. I would definitely, yeah, wanna reconnect. So
I
you
hope so.
did you hear about how she recovered at all?
So, the yeah, as I said, the all of them had PTSD as a result of what's happened. That she has to have, yeah, so we get choked up about this. She has to have surgery for the rest of her life. Because of the severity of the burns, her skin doesn't stretch. So
Oh.
she can't spend long amounts of time outdoors or in the sun. And she has to have ongoing surgery into, her life to
As she
be able,
grows.
yeah, because of her skin, and, um, the impact that had on her. Yeah. So
Yeah.
to look in the mirror every day and be reminded of who did that to her, I can't imagine what she is going through.
Mm.
But from what I've heard from reconnecting with the lead detective, when I did my specialist child interviewing course, he was actually on the course. So I was able to ask him about it, and
Mm.
that they were all thriving, doing so much better now. So it was just so really good to hear that,
Yeah.
because that mother copped so much flank on social media. It pissed me off, because most people's comments were around, why didn't she run into the room? Why didn't she do this? Why did she do that? She did what she had to do in those moments, and she did what was right. And that was calling out and screaming out for help, because she didn't know what to do. And he, like I said, he was a massive dude, and he was violent, and he was a domestic violence perpetrator, that she did exactly what she needed to do, and she deserves acknowledgement for that. She deserves to be, um, like I said, applauded for that and not punished as a mother. because
Yeah.
those kids are still here because she asked for help.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
wasn't Yeah, it wasn't just me that went in the house that day. I had a neighbour that went in and fought him off, and he got an award in recognition of that, and rightfully so. He did amazing. Um, so yeah, the fact that lots of us neighbours that came together to support her on that night because of her screaming out for help, she deserves recognition for that, not to be labeled and put down as a mother. It was completely unfair, and that really annoyed me at the time when that happened. Mm.
Yeah. Oh, mate. The strongest thing that she did was to get out of there and ask other people to help. Like,
Right. Yep.
who
She
knows
could.
what would have happened to her if she would have stayed?
It could have been her in
Yeah.
caught crossfire of it. We just don't know,
Yeah,
and that's
that's right.
the thing that people need to realise is she could have been a statistic along with those kids if she didn't call out that night, and I wouldn't have known because I wouldn't have heard it,
Yeah, that's it.
and no other neighbour would have heard it, or it was too late. So she
Yeah.
did exactly what she needed to do in those moments, and that's what saved those kids' lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't written this question down,
Mm,
but I've been thinking about it a little bit. You know, when you at work as a cop,
mm,
you probably unknowingly, some people go into like a little process, like I'm at work, okay, I'm going to do this job. But I think sometimes you would unknowingly go, okay, I'm going to go to work. I'm a cop. My job's to protect the community. And then when you leave, you're like, okay, I'm going to my home, which is usually a safe space. Um, how have you dealt with that sort of having the job find you in your home?
do you mean like it following you back home? Like when you
Yeah,
say,
like, but just you're not prepared at all to have to deal with an incident like that where you would be at work.
mm,
Probably not even to that extent, to be honest with you. Like, that's a really bad day at work as a cop to go
mm,
to something like that.
mm.
But for you to just be at your home, watching TV, getting ready for the afternoon, I guess, and then having to deal with that, how has that affected you?
Oh, massively, because it was that the dominoes effect that followed on from that night in regards to how I was treated and the support, well, lack of support that I got at the time, which made me sit in my head too much.
Yeah.
And as you would know, Rosie, as police officers, they tell you to switch off, but you have these incidences like this one, or I had one of my first 338, sorry, sudden death call jobs, and that was a little girl, and that didn't prepare. I wasn't prepared with just how she would respond to seeing her dad hanging from a beam
Yeah.
in their living room, and her turning around and shooting me a big smile saying, "Daddy's fixing the roof." And it's those moments you take home with you and you think to yourself, could I have done more? Should I have done more? Why didn't I do more? How do I get to sleep? Like,
Yeah.
am I meant to be thinking these feelings? Am I meant to be thinking these thoughts? And I think that's the biggest problem amongst first responders is we don't have these debriefs anymore. I remember when I first started policing, you were able to sit down and have a debrief and have we all have the dark sense of humor, and that's what I love. That's what I love about policing. That's especially what I love about the army is you have the dark sense of humor to share amongst your colleagues in order to process your thoughts and feelings. Because if you're feeling a certain way, you better bet your dollar that someone else is feeling exactly what you're feeling. And when you talk these things out, you're able to process and you're able to store it somewhere in your memory bank. And our cops aren't going to,
Yeah.
we're not going to go seek the help because we're just going to be like, nah, it's okay. It's my job. I put on this uniform. I'm meant to be, um, I guess, heroic in a sense. I'm bulletproof. Whereas at the end of the day, you take the uniform off. We're all human.
Yeah.
Why that persona is still very much thrown out there, I wish I could answer that. Because ever since, I hate saying the dreaded C word, but ever since COVID happened,
Yeah.
I think mental health is definitely at the forefront for a lot of people, especially first responders, not just police, but we're talking paramedics. fire brigade, St John ambulance workers, nurses, teachers, we're all taking on a whole lot more than what was expected of us
Before.
prior, prior COVID. Mm.
Yeah, I agree with that too. My husband was in defense during COVID, and the expectations on them during COVID was incredible. Like he's some of the things I'm sure defense aren't supposed to do, but they do it because that's what they're told to do, right?
Yeah, you
And
almost have
everyone else is the
to
same.
roll. Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, you just briefly mentioned about the lack of support that you received from
Mhm.
work. And of course, like that incident, and along with the other incident you mentioned with the little girl and her dad at a hanging, um, they impact your life. There's
Mm.
no if, buts, or maybes about it. It doesn't matter who you are. Um, do you want to talk about that impact that it has had on your life? And then at what point did you decide that it was time to seek some help?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that incident, I think because there was obviously, which we briefly touched on, with challenges that were in my early childhood, with losing my mum to cancer, to being bullied, as jobs that I attended in my early career that were quite confrontational and traumatic. I was in denial for 3 years after that incident, because when you join the police, you don't want to be portrayed as weak. And especially as a female officer, you don't want to be portrayed as an emotional wreck either.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's on my personal experience and how I was treated, and how I've spoken to other female officers and how they've been treated, as opposed to the male colleagues that have, you know, come forward and talk about their struggles. So when I was in denial for 3 years, that's when the symptoms and that, because I was in denial, because I don't want to be portrayed as weak, because I was putting on the tough front exterior, things kept on popping up to the surface. Irritability, my lack of sleep, flashbacks, lack of concentration, my lack of drive for the job anymore. And over the last 6 years, I've sought my own help and intervention through, stellar injections, which didn't help. I've been hospitalized, doing a trauma recovery program to seek help, doing talk therapy just to stay afloat. And so many people assume that you should be healed now because this has gone back 2015. However, I was I felt ashamed to ask for the help, and letting others bear witness to my mess that I couldn't make sense of in my head. The last thing that I wanted to do is admit that maybe I do have PTSD.
Mhm.
Um, because I also just want to mention as well that I want people to know that with healing, and when you're on this road to recovery, that there is no there. It's not linear. There is no you're fully recovered. Setbacks are going to be inevitable. It's meaning to stay on top of that. And the largest misconception I've come against with PTSD is that people think that I am forgetful. People think that I'm lazy towards relationships. And I wish people just knew just how often I would stare at my phone, wishing that I knew how to call them or how to answer the texts. Um, because when you're in crisis mode, you tend to get tunnel vision. And I think the absolute worst case scenario is that all you can focus on is surviving. And I was constantly assessing threats, figuring out how to neutralize, staying calm, remaining calm. When there was emotional chaos that you deal with as a police officer, as well as going home, I wish I knew that. I wish I knew at the time just to accept the help earlier. Um, yeah, sorry, I've gone on a bit of a tangent then.
No, you're right.
It wasn't until there was an incident that happened when I was working, and it wasn't until I got home that I realized, no, woke my husband up and I said, I don't think I'm coping. I need help. And my husband is a beautiful man, and sometimes he can't be too honest with me. Um, and he knew I was struggling. I just don't think he knew how to address it with me. But that night when I said that and I was having dark thoughts about no longer wanting to be here and expressing that to him after an incident, after like another incident at work, that's what started the process of seeking help and intervention. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Is it because just with your husband, is he do you shut him down sometimes, do you reckon? Because I know I do with mine. If he brings something up and I can't see it myself, sometimes I'll be like, no, mate, that's not what's going on. But usually he's pretty spot on the money.
You
Is
don't
that
understand. You don't understand. Yeah. You do. Yeah, I do. I do tend to shut him down quite a bit when it comes to that. But um, it's like a sense of you don't understand what I'm going through, fuck off, which is what I do say. it's it's more so I don't understand what's going on in my head.
Yeah.
How do I
Yeah.
explain to you what's going on in my head?
Mm.
Yes, it's coming out in other areas of me throwing dishes. Well, I don't do that, but I'm trying to provide some examples. Throwing the dishes about, or yelling. Yelling's
Yeah.
a perfect one. Like yelling back at him over something. He'd be like, "Why are you snapping up over me over? I don't know, me not throwing the rubbish out into the garbage bin." It's like it's not just that isolated thing I'm annoyed about. You've got to understand it's a buildup of things.
Yes.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tough
But I
though.
like to think that, oh, it is tough. It is tough for them because they want to help and they don't know how to go into fix it mode.
Mm.
And that's all men want to do. They want to go into fix it mode. And that's what he wants to do. But sometimes, and I've said to him, and I'm big on communication, and since I've sought help with this because of me being shut down for so long, I said to him, when I'm having these talks with you, all you need to do is ask me the question, do you want me to fix it or do you want me to listen?
Yeah.
That's all I ask him to ask. Say, I just want you to listen. Just let me vent.
Yeah.
And then, and that usually works. And so he'll let me have my vent. And then I'll say, thank you for not going into fix it mode because I don't need you to. I just want you to listen because I'm obviously needing to get something off my chest and you're my best friend. And it helps to just have someone there to just vent with. So he's my biggest support. He's my biggest support. He's my biggest rock through all this. I've lost so many friends. I've only got one best friend who's still serving in the army. Everyone else is kind of just like fallen back, I guess, because as I've chosen this path of recovery, a lot of people perceive you as what you were to how you should be, but you're not that person anymore. It's
Yeah.
very hard transition
It is
to move
very,
past, especially.
very difficult. Um, because there's so many facets to losing the friendships, I think too. Like I know for me, when I was in the cops and I know that people were leaving because of mental health issues, there was a very strong stance about, you can't just turn up at their front door. You can't go there in uniform. You can't do this, you can't do that. So you're almost, well, no, you're encouraged not to go and see them or call them or like, in fear of triggering them in inverted commas. But what that did was they lost contact with everybody that they thought sort of had their back at work, and no one contacted them except for the duty officer that was supposed to do it once a month. So then they lose all of that connection, and it happened to me too. Like I'm sure it happens to most people. I think that's where we can get a bit better, right? In those organizations in
Yeah,
looking after people.
yeah, and you've highlighted such a significant point as well, because now that you've mentioned that, I actually was told not until years later that my OIC, so my officer in charge of my station at that time, actually called up certain officers and gave them a direct order not to contact me and
Yeah.
not to call me, not to text me. And this is why I thought that I lost so many friends, was because I thought they just didn't fucking care. Whereas no, they were given a direct order not to contact me when I needed a friend. I
Yeah.
needed a cop mate because they understand with, your family members and that aren't police officers or defense or other first responders, they don't understand. Um, so yeah, it's disgraceful that that happens, and it breaks my heart that that still happens because we need to be the job is tough enough as it is. We need to be surrounding each other and being each other's backbones and supporting one another and uplifting one another, not, being too scared that we're going to trigger someone. Sometimes sitting with someone and watching a series and having a cup of coffee would be enough for some people, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you're so right.
It's just one of the biggest things I think it's something that I miss not being in anymore is that connection, the camaraderie, the feeling that you're part of a pretty elite team. There's not a lot of people in the world that are police, and it's a different type of job. Defense as well. Any first responder job, there's that culture that's there, and it's something that you deeply miss. So to not have that anymore, it definitely exacerbates the trauma because you're grieving as well. Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that's really bad as well with the treatment is if someone does, like I experienced it firsthand, is and with mates that I've spoken to who have since left, is when they do finally come forward and speak out, uh, it's not that they can't still perform their tasks and their duties. They get isolated from doing their work. Whereas the struggles of whatever they're struggling with, the job, the policing, or whatever career aspect we're talking about, that's the thing that they're thriving for and they live for that day. You have these that think that they're protecting them by taking them away from their operational duties or trying to take them away from their roles. It's actually causing more harm than good. Let their doctors be the decider of if they can still perform certain tasks or not them making that choice for them. And I don't like that.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. So,
Mm.
because of your actions that day in 2015, you've been awarded the inaugural National Police Bravery Award, the Commissioner's Award for Bravery, and the Star of Courage. Congratulations. I think that's bloody amazing and well deserved, obviously. How have you felt about receiving these accolades? And is there any challenges with you in relation to experiencing that trauma, but then being celebrated for your bravery as well?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yeah, when I first received the call in 2018 from the chief executive of Scott Webber from the Police Federation of Australia telling me about the award, the Australian National Police Bravery Award, I actually did think it was a prank call.
Oh,
I actually think I remember telling him to fuck off, I think, from memory. And he was like, it's not a joke, Steph. This is not a scam call. This is an actual, because I was like, what is the Police Federation of Australia? I've never heard of it.
never heard of
And,
it.
and I was not expecting it. Um, and, out of everyone in Australia that was nominated, I found out through when Scott told me when I was having a conversation with Scott Webber, he said, one person nominated you. And I said, who? And he said, it was your husband. So how my husband even came to think and have it to look for that as well, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So I was so thankful for not only him supporting me and doing something completely out of the box, but to get that call and then to unexpectedly be flown to Canberra, it was just really overwhelming. I think because the sense of I wasn't expecting it, because like I said, this was 3 years after, 15, yes, 3 years after. So it came out of nowhere. I met some really, truly amazing people over in Canberra, and I was even awarded by Peter Dutton. And when I look at my medals, I got to be honest, I don't see what other people see. For me, the work I did, whether it be to serve the community, my country, or individuals, it comes from a place of duty, not my desire for recognition.
Yeah.
So I do view them as a part of what is expected of me as a person, but also as a professional. Um, And to be celebrated and awarded with awards, what feels like to me is doing my job, it does create a bit of an internal conflict within me.
Mm.
It almost feels as though the accolades shine too bright on the spotlight of what I consider to them to be a reminder of a career that I love that I can no longer pursue, which eats me up. And because I know that I had a lot more in me to do way more, way more than just that incident. And it's also a reminder those medals are also an impact on the mental health that has changed me, and that's hard. And how hard I have to work at that every day in order to keep those symptoms at bay. So, in saying this, receiving those accolades comes from not doesn't come from in gratitude, but from the strong belief that true fulfillment comes from the work itself, not the applause that may follow from it.
Yeah.
So for me, the reward lies in the positive impact that I hopefully made on others, but not the recognition. So it's a bit of a push-pull. So as much as I am thankful and honoured by the medals I've received, it still holds a really heavy weight on me about the things that I no longer have. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mhm.
that I that's pretty much the reason I asked the question actually, because I can imagine there'd be this definite internal struggle with it, because they're pretty amazing awards to receive. And then, to do it, like you said, you're just doing your job and what you're supposed to be doing, but then that you also can't do that anymore. And I have that same feeling about with my PTSD, is that it's taken away something that I've really loved so much, like going to work and putting on my uniform and doing something that I felt helped the community. So I can really resonate with that and that reminder for you when you look at your medals about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, as I said, it's just that constant reminder of what I don't have anymore. And it's almost like when you receive an award like that and it's almost like you put a bigger expectation on you that, wow, I've just received a medal for this. I need to exceed
Mm,
above that. It kind of feels like that as well.
yeah,
And because I wasn't, and because I was obviously affected by the aftermath of everything of the dominoes effects that followed suit from that, I couldn't help but feel like I'm a massive failure. And that's something I've had to overcome for I'm still overcoming. Yeah.
yeah,
So I felt like I said, I feel like I could have given back so much more. The fact that that's been taken away from me and I don't have a choice now due to my doctor putting me up for retirement. It's yeah, it's heartbreaking
yeah,
because I wanted to do more. I love the job.
yeah, yeah. Um, so what's next for you? I know that you're studying psychology, which is really exciting.
Mm.
What inspired that decision to do that, and how do you think that your lived experience will help or influence your approach to psychology?
Yeah, so I think from my policing background, where we are often exposed to trauma, violence, human suffering on the daily basis, the long shifts, the understaffing, and relentless operational demands leave little time for recovery.
Yeah.
While we have this toughen up culture, um, it's just still very much in the forefront of which discourages office. And with my background with repeat exposure to critical incidences such as domestic violence, suicides, fatalities, accumulates into unresolved psychological stress, often manifests into burnout.
Mm,
And because of this, um, after 16 years of policing, I've seen the best, the worst, and downright confusing sides of human behaviour. And let's just say I've spent a fair share of time wondering what on earth were they thinking, and sometimes what on earth was I thinking.
mm,
Um, from calming down domestic disputes or interviewing children with the aftermath of trauma, it has came clear to me that I wanted to have a deeper understanding of what goes on inside people's heads, and I feel as though that's important, just as important as keeping them out of trouble. However, as a family domestic violence officer that's now transitioning into studying psychology, um, I feel that there's always a story behind the chaos.
Yeah.
Usually trauma, broken systems, unaddressed mental health struggles. It's like being in an endless true crime documentary where the answers just aren't that obvious.
Yeah.
So I chose to study psychology because of my strong desire for understanding the human mind and why people do what they do in those crisis or chaotic times. But not just that, and not because I want to go into fixing everyone, because life's just not that simple, and I'm definitely not that talented or that smart. Far from it, but I want to dig deeper, and I am fascinated with the human behavior and why people do what they do. And psychology provides me with the tools to understand the messiness of the human behavior with more than just raising an eyebrow.
Yeah.
So with combining my policing experience with my knowledge, I hope to not just ask, okay, what's happened? What's brought you in here today? But also help with rewriting that ending for them, or at least making it a little less dramatic and more a fulfilling life for them and what they deserve, because that's what we all deserve. We all deserve peace. This is going to sound so PC, but so we all deserve peace on earth.
Yeah.
And although that as a police officer, I was attending to people that were at their worst parts of their life, I'd like to go, I want to go into psychology because then I can go into, okay, how can I fix this? Not, as I said before, it's not fix this. It's more, how can I help to resolve or help you process emotions that you should be feeling, as opposed to feeling as a police officer, you feel, weak, or you feel that something's wrong with me to be feeling these feelings. And I want to help that process a little bit better. And I think coming from a policing perspective and seeing how the system is, I would also like to get into the avenue of supporting police officers that are going through it, and hopefully if they're transitioning out or want to remain in.
Mm.
I think hearing it from someone that's lived it and experienced it will help them be able to open up a bit more, because so many of us are too scared to open up to just anyone. If it's a past person that has done the work, I think that's a good step in the right direction. For those that are a bit reluctant to do that, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's you'll have to open up like a centre for first responders in Western Australia because you don't have one.
I know we do need one, don't we? Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah,
We need something like that. We need to change something.
yeah.
Where to start? I know.
Um,
And you think with WA being the wealthy state, so they keep saying, why isn't there one?
mm,
It still astonishes me. Yeah.
um, if there was one thing that you could change in relation to how first responders are supported after traumatic incidents, what would it be? What would you
Mm,
prioritize?
yeah. So I'm probably going to be pretty blunt in my response here, but
Good.
those who sit up high up in positions, um, they need to pay more attention to the complex issues when it comes to mental health. Because to me, protecting those who protect and serve you should have all the resources thrown at them in order for them to be supported. And there will never be change among police officers of those that are high up in charge. Never be part of the solution if they continue to pull wool over the eyes. This is the attitude that frontline officers are experiencing, and this is why morale is so low. And you can see why, because even through conducting some research recently, it's been released that suicide rate amongst serving police officer has more than doubled in the last decade. So You don't need to be a rocket scientist to see that something is very, very wrong here, and that needs and something's very wrong with the number of suicides amongst ranks across the country, and it's going to continue to rise if our leadership don't get up our high horses, start listening, and showing a bit of fucking compassion and support, and not just lip service, because the job is tough enough, but to not care for our own is the biggest kick in the guts that we all feel. And it's no wonder that officers are burning out a lot quicker. Cops just want to feel supported by their own. And this is where the majority are letting us down. So that would be my first focus would be acknowledging and seriously acknowledging first responders have it tough when it comes to bearing the mental load and the impacts, and show them that they are supported and that they feel safe and encouraged to go seek help when they're not feeling it.
Yeah.
That would be the biggest one, I would think. That would be that's a very small starter, is show the support, show what you can do, not just talk about it,
Yeah.
because we're not feeling it. We're not seeing the compassion. We're not seeing the support from any of our leadership right now.
No. And it's the same across the state, like across our country for sure. Over here in New South Wales, it's the exact same story. And you're right, it is the biggest fucking kick in the guts
Yep.
when you go out day after day, do this job, and then you get back to your station and you're in the shit in the station and there's no support there from within. How can people do their
Mm.
jobs properly? One, if you don't feel the support, and then how are they ever going to go seek support if if they know they're not going to get it, or they're going to get berated, or you know, career suicide comes into mind. You know, a lot of people don't seek help because they think that their careers will be over, which is likely because they get punted into some silly office job or menial task or have their gun locked up. Um, yeah, it's got to change right from the top.
It does have to change from the top, and that's where we highlighted before about um, the realization that mental health still very much has a stigma attached to it, because you do feel like you're looked at differently, you feel like you're judged, you feel like you're labelled, you get treated. You feel like you get treated like you can't perform as well as one of your peers who hasn't been diagnosed with a mental health condition. And because of this, and witnessing other members being treated so disgracefully when it comes to coming out and saying, I need support, I'm not coping. Um, it it's no wonder people aren't coming forward, and they're struggling internally.
Mm,
And I it really needs to change.
yeah,
The more we talk about it, the more that we raise awareness about it, the more that the stigma will slowly collapse on itself, I find.
yeah.
It's just gonna take a lot of time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think so too. I think, and one of the reasons why I want to just do your podcast and have people like yourself come on is so that we can have these really open, raw conversations that people don't get privy to, and so we can normalize what actually happens in moving out of the police or first responder agencies, all the shit that happens, because we can talk freely about it. We don't have to watch our backs in relation to those, you know, things that can happen
Yep.
to you. And I get lots of feedback from people like, these are the conversations that I need to listen to because no one talks about it enough. So, I mean, it's been amazing to have you on to have a chat about it.
Yeah, no, and I will say that since going on, not being so scared to do the work, I have since found out that in order for the light to shine bright, the darkness must be present.
Yes.
That's a quote that was spoken about. I'm like, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
That's beautiful.
yeah. And we shouldn't feel guilty about seeking help, because yeah, it's not you giving seeking help is not giving up, it's refusing to give up, was another one that I really liked just recently.
Yeah. It's so
And
true.
we need to remind ourselves of these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be really tough, right? And I'm so glad that you're able to come on and have like this really meaningful conversation with me and share your experiences as deeply traumatic as they are. I really appreciate you coming on. So thank you so much, Steph.
No, thank you for your time.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any new ones. We release fresh content every Tuesday. And while you're there, take a moment to leave us a review. I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget to connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Tactical Yoga Australia and share this episode with your friends, family, and workmates to spread inspiration. Your support means the world. My name is Rosie Skene. Join me again next week for another empowering and positive episode of Triumph Beyond Trauma. Until then, be kind to your mind and trust in the magic of your consistent and positive efforts. Triumph beyond your trauma is closer than you think. Have the best week.